simple step. A simple step. You know, there is a quote, a Chinese proverb that says, 1,000-mile journey begins with a simple step. Yeah. We always think that if we're going to have some great thing, we need to have great stuff. And it's true, we do need to have great stuff. But great stuff isn't the way God's, the way people see it, but the way God sees it. And God's view of things is very, very different than our view of things. A little girl picked up in a raid. Now, I have some members that are not here right now, but they are Assyrian in descent. Assyria was a powerful nation. And in fact, in the Old Testament, it's oftentimes referred to as Aramean. Aramean, which is not Armenian. Aram, it's Aramaic comes from that. It is in an area of Media, which is, Mesopotamia. There's a Mesopotamia. There's a fertile crescent that comes. So on this side is the Tower of Babel, and to the east of it is present-day Iran or Persia, right? And then you come up over the top of the desert, which is more like the Jordan area, more hot. You come back, or, that whole area there, the southern part, before you get then to the Red Sea, one of the Gulf of Aqaba, and you come across up to the mountainous area and then back down through Turkey, down to the place called Jerusalem, and then eventually Egypt, the Fertile Crescent. In the middle of it is where the Assyrian kingdom was. There were many city-states, one of them being Nineveh. Shalmaneser III was a big king, but he was in a bit of a civil war. And when you're in the middle of a civil war with his brother, actually, fighting over the throne a bit, you'll have a little bit of craziness happening. Well, in the midst of that, there was also a civil war in Israel that had separated the southern kingdom from the northern kingdom. And this was after Solomon died. Sorry about all this history, but when Solomon died, we had Rehoboam, his son, which did not want to lower taxes. He wanted to raise taxes. See, it's no different than America, right? And so the northern kingdoms, the northern kingdom, which were the 10 tribes of Israel, not Judah or Benjamin, but the other ones said, we're going to go with Jeroboam. And they set up Samaria as their kingdom. But Samaria was very close to the lands of this Assyria. Today we have Syria, kind of in the same area. But think of Syria, north of Syria and east of Syria, and you have Assyria, the ancient kingdom. Not related, even though it sounds the same, but not related. So, there was a girl that had been taken captive by the Assyrians, and she was Hebrew from the northern kingdoms. And she was at the household of a man in charge of the military of the Assyrian Empire. His name was Naaman. You have to have the A. It's N-A-A-M-A-N. Say, what's Naaman? Naaman, we usually say. No, it's Naaman. It's almost like in Filipino you have the same thing, or in Hawaii you'll have the where you have two vowels and you say both of them. Well, Naaman. Now, I don't know. I don't think it was his proper name. You see, there's lots of names. And in fact, even in the book of Kings, we'll find an Assyrian king which isn't the same name. And some historians say, well, this is just fairy tales. Remember that even in the United States we have the same thing. We have a president right now. He's President Donald J. Trump, right? But some just say Trump. They just say Trump. You notice that? Well, it's just like in the ancient world. You have different names. Some even called him Orange Man. Right? Right? Sometimes names cross over, and the names they use here are what the local people will say, right? So just because it's not the exact name doesn't mean it's not the exact guy. It's kind of like flying into Idlewild Airport in New York. And everyone says, Idlewild? Idlewild? Well, that's JFK now. But that was the name before. See, names are... So you're dealing in the Bible with people that were local to there, and they went by what because there was no internet. They didn't know proper names sometimes. The people they knew didn't know. Maybe they couldn't even speak the language of those people over there, so they give the name that's the local name. Well, this guy, Naaman, but by the way, you know the name Naaman means pleasant. How'd you like that? A name of a guy named Pleasant that's in charge of the military of your enemy. Kind of reminds me, speaking of Halloween, Donald Pleasance was one of the actors in it. And you go, oh, that guy is kind of scary. Well, his name's Donald Pleasant, right? This little girl was in his house. And as all of us, if we were enslaved or put into servitude of another nation, we would never pray for the betterment of that person. But read with me 2 Kings chapter 5. 2 Kings chapter 5. It's in the Old Testament. You'll find it, Matthew, Mark, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings. It's right there near the beginning. But 2 Kings chapter 5, now Naaman was the commander of the army of the king of the Arameans, or the Assyrians. Notice that. See the name? See the name? They call them the Arameans because it's mentioning their language. It's like saying, oh, the English over there. The English, well, they're Americans. Well, they speak English, So the Arameans, or the Assyrians. He was a great man in the sight of his master, highly regarded, because through him the Lord had given victory to the Assyrians, or Aram. He was a valiant soldier, but he had leprosy. Now, there are different types of leprosy out there. There's the kind where the fingers literally fall off. You'll find those in certain parts of the world. But then there's the leprosy, which is where the skin becomes it's like the rosacea, stronger rosacea. Now we have lots of medical ways of dealing with this. And in the ancient world, when you had skin disease, people it'd scare them. Don't touch it because you might get it yourself. It's catching, And this guy was incredible, but I can imagine every time you look at him, he's got something wrong. But yet he was doing well. Obviously, the king loved him. Now there were bands of raiders from the Arameans that went out and had taken a captive young girl from Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, if only my master... Wait. She didn't say, if only my master would die from leprosy. No, she didn't say that. If only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy. You know who she's referring to? Yes, the healer, but there is a prophet. And his name was Elijah. Now, Shah will come. Elijah was that big prophet that brought the fire down from heaven, right? And she knew about him. But then she was taken hostage. And now we have a different prophet. We're going to get into a story in a second, but let's continue on. So she says, if only he goes to Samaria, not realizing that the king in Samaria was a horrible king, the Israel king, the northern kingdom of Israel. He was a bad guy. She just wants healing for Naaman. A simple step to move forward. Well, to speed the story along, Naaman finds out about it and says, you know what, maybe I'll go find it. So he actually has the king of Assyria write a letter to the king in Samaria, the Israelite king, the northern kingdom of Israel king. But of course, King Uzziah thinks it's a trap. He gets this letter and says, we're going to ask you to have your prophet heal Naaman of leprosy. And he's like, they're trying to pick a fight with us. Because literally, that's exactly what it would be, picking a fight. He tears his clothes. I mean, that's what the old style is renting your robes to let people know, woe is me. Throw dirt on yourself and say, I'm so sad, my life is terrible. Depression. Because I don't want to be at war with that big kingdom over there. And this is when Elisha sends a letter to him and says, dude, there is a prophet. Send him to me. He's like, oh, I can blame someone else? Sure, I can blame someone else. So he actually tells them, go to Elisha. And actually, this is near Jericho. Near Jericho. Naaman comes, and he starts heading down. Let's see here. I'm going to go to verse 8. When Elisha heard that the man of God heard that the king of Israel had torn his robes, he sent him this message. Why have you torn your robes? Have the man come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet of Israel. Verse 9. So Naaman went with his horses and chariots and stopped at the door of Elisha's house. Now, we're dealing with a lot of time here. Letters went back. Communication of where it is. All of this. This is months that went by. And finally, this man Naaman comes with all his entourage to the place of Elisha. Now, this was kind of a sad place. And this is here where you have to understand the school of the prophets. Elijah was powerful. But Elijah was hated by the political establishment. Those in charge hated him. Why? Because kings and presidents always want to hear what makes their ears feel good, right? They want advisors that tell them. They say, I'm going to hear from the prophet. What's the prophet going to say? And the prophet says, oh, you're awesome. Everything you're doing is perfect. There may be poor people in the street, but they're not going to say anything about that. Why? Because the prophet wants the king happy with him, right? But here's the problem. Elijah and Elisha don't say anything positive. They say, clean up your act. Make sure that the widows and orphans aren't constantly, in hunger. Make sure that things are clean. Make sure that you yourself with your business aren't messing with people constantly, using your power to gain your own wealth, living in your ivory palace, which literally Uzziah had. My friends, being a prophet is not easy because you have to be honest. Honesty is not something that's acceptable in the world. Right? Whether you're on the left or the right, honesty is not acceptable. The kingdom of God, on the other hand, honesty leads to redemption through repentance. But that's the hard way. This is why Jesus literally said that wide is the way that leads to destruction, because it's easy. Narrow is the way that leads to life. Why? Because that means it's hard. It means when you make mistakes and errors, you say, I'm sorry. That's not easy. Fixing mistakes of the past is never easy, especially for kings. So Naaman comes to Elisha's house. Check this out. Verse 10. He knocks on the front door. Right? You come and you see this little house. And by the way, the state did not fund the school of the prophets. Kind of like our Adventist schools, you know. The government schools, let me tell you, everyone talks about education funds. Everyone always loves to talk about that. You know, every child in public education, depends on the state, gets close to $20,000 to $15,000 allocated. Depends on the state. Some states are lower, some states are higher. California's very high. Whereas, so imagine that. Imagine having to pay $20,000 a month. I mean, a year. It's not going to happen. But it's a government school. But the Adventist school, tuition is somewhere around $5,000 to $6,000, and then there's also our churches that kick our funds in, and then the conference that. So we have to live on a lot less money, just like the school of the prophets in the Old Testament. Money was tight. That means our houses sometimes have dirt floors, right? I mean, maybe not literally, because you can't with code have a dirt house, but Elisha did have dirt floors because the word of God mattered to him. He cared more about the students coming out of that school than himself. Okay, so he comes, but he sends his servant Gehazi to speak to Naaman. If you were the head of the military of Assyria, do you think you'd be happy about having the servant talk to you instead of the prophet? Am I putting you to sleep, guys? We awake? All right. So, if you're in charge of the military of an entire country and you want to talk to a prophet or a pastor or something like that, and yet he sends his underling to talk to you, you think you're going to be happy about that? Probably not. And in fact, here, let's read. Let's see what he says. He says, so Elisha sent his messenger to say to him, go wash 7 times in the where? Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed. Verse 11, but Naaman went away angry and said, I thought he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and I love this, wave his hand around. Abracadabra, you know, the Harry Potter, right? Bling, you know, that's the way that the world looks at it. This is how a good thing happens, right? Wave the hand around. Get into the medical. Okay, in the medical, we're going to check your, going to put you on a scale, going to make sure you're okay, check everything, and give you a pill, right? This is the kind of way he's looking for. But Elisha said, I want you to have faith to go out to a river. Have you ever seen that river? Well, there are a couple different places, and the place we often go for our baptism is at the mouth of the Sea of Galilee, Jordan River. It is clean and clear. When I baptized you, Andy, and almost got baptized myself, you remember that? I looked, and I looked down, and there were tilapia that were in the water looking at me. What are you doing here? I know no one's going to get me here. There was a sea otter. I mean, not a sea otter, but it's just an otter coming along looking at me. Kept going, That's how it is. It's beautiful and clean and clear. But if you've been to the crossing site, the place where Elijah crossed over to the Jordan side and went to the mountain, the place where the children of Israel crossed, the place where John the Baptist baptized, the place where Jesus was baptized, the color of that water is mud brown. Have you ever taken a bath and out of the spigot comes brown water? I remember in Covina, there are water lines that I think were put in the ground in the 1940s. It's like Los Angeles. And every once in a while, there's another water main break. You know how I can tell there's a water main break? Before I hear the big trucks out there, chiseling. You know how I know? I turn on my bathtub, and it starts coming out with sand. And I go, oh, never mind. Anna, don't drink the water. Let's use the one with a filter, right? And we're good. Maybe you'll get some water go down to 7-Eleven and get some water. You know what I mean? And that's when it starts coming. You don't want to take a bath in that. I mean, I walk in white and I come out a different culture. How do you like that? And that's the thing. It's like, how is this? This is not, and this is exactly how this man, Naaman, says. I want to come out of the water clean. I have leprosy, okay? You understand? It's already not clean. I'm not going in that water. I'm going to go in the jacuzzi back at my house. A simple step. Elisha had asked him to do something that made absolutely no sense. Faith is something that doesn't make sense initially. You know that? Faith is something that goes against our instincts. In fact, I'd like you to take your Bible, and we're going to move just a few little chapters back to 1 Kings chapter 19. When Elijah had gone through this great thing, and then he ran away because Queen Jezebel said, because you did this great action and destroyed all my Baal priests, you're going to be as dead as they are. And he ran, and he went to Mount Sinai. And God showed him that real power doesn't come from the fire in heaven. It doesn't come from the wind blowing and knocking everything in earthquakes. Power comes from the still, small voice. Remember that? And then he says, do two things. Anoint Jehu, the king of the southern kingdom of Israel. Jehu, anoint him as king. Number two, go and find a man named Elisha. You need a Padawan, God said. When you get depressed, you need to have someone with you that's strong. He came down and he met Elisha. God says that, verse 19 of chapter 19, 1 Kings 19:19. How do you like that? So Elijah went there and found Elisha, son of Shaphat. He was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen. He himself was driving 12 pair. Elijah went up to him, threw his cloak around him, the talit, his mantle thrown around him. That says, you're a part of my team. And Elisha is, what? Now, apparently, Elisha had perhaps gone to the school of the prophets. I don't know exactly how this worked. They knew each other. But he didn't know he was being called until this happened. Verse 20, Elisha then left his oxen, ran to Elijah. Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye, he said, and I will come with you. He said, go back, Elijah said. What have I done to you? In other words, it's your choice. It's kind of like the Jedi. You have to make a choice, right? To be in God's work. You choose that. And then you live by the code of it. And that's exactly what Elisha did. So he went back to his family. In fact, all of his 12 yoke of oxen, you know what he did with them? He turned them into stakes. And he burned the plow. Well, let me ask you something. What does that tell you about Elisha? You ever heard of the escape clause? Right? You know, if you're young and you get married and then you have a prenup, there's an escape clause. Well, what if it doesn't work out? Well, then we're okay. But this was all in. He took the oxen that he was using to plow the field. He turned them into stakes. He brought them to his community and said, you guys enjoy. He burned his plow. That tells you Elisha was willing to be all in. Faith is all in. Naaman didn't want to be all in. I just want to get healed. I just want to be okay. I just like to have a nice skin so I'm not looking like a leper. Is it too much to ask? Elisha forced him to be either out or all in. And it wasn't really all in, if you think about it, but it was embarrassing. In fact, it made Naaman so angry. It made him so upset. In fact, verse 11 of, this is in 2 Kings chapter 5. 2 Kings chapter 5 again, verse 11. But Naaman went away angry, and he says, I thought, surely he would come out to me, stand and call in the name of the Lord, wave his hand around over my spots, cure me of my leprosy. Aren't the Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than these waters in Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be cleansed? So he turned around in rage. Verse 13, Naaman's servants, now this is interesting. Isn't it interesting? The little servant girl tells him about the prophet, and now a servant again says, my father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, go conquer that hill, go save Mordor. If you had been given some great thing, wouldn't you have done it? But all he says to you is wash and be cleansed. Try 7 times. The hothead says, okay, I'm not going to go north back to Assyria and plan to destroy this country. I'm going to go to the east. And as he got to that river and he saw the brown water, I'm sure he had his opinions. I can imagine this military general stripping down to his underwear, maybe in a tent, but he comes out as the ladies are probably at the side of the river from Jericho washing their clothes maybe. I don't know if you've been in the countries where the washing is along the river. In India, we see that all the time along the Ganges River. And everybody looks, and when someone, look over, is that an important guy? Naaman decides to take that one simple step. But is it that simple? It's not so simple to be humiliated. Maybe the guys lined up and put up a bunch of sheets so everybody wouldn't see him. I don't know. He had military guys with him, I'm sure. And he starts to step down into that brown. Have you ever stepped in muddy water? The toes. When I was in New Jersey, there was a creek right in front of our house there, near Hackettstown. And I once went down in it because we had a little boat and I fell in the water. And my feet went down in the water. And I came up and I had all these leeches. Those leeches? Oh, what is that? And Dad told me, that's a leech. You got to cut them off. The toes in the mud. Now over in Israel, it's a little different. Not the leeches. It's a more arid climate. But the sandy, gooey, muddy river, your foot goes down and it goes down and it keeps going down a little bit, right? And then you take the next step and you take the next step. And he looks back at his guys. If this doesn't work, this country is so history. Right? Sir, baptizo. that's the Greek, sorry, but in a mikvah, in Hebrew is the mikvah, what you're put down into the water for a baptism, for a cleansing. Cleansing, it's brown water. Down he goes. 1. Up he comes. He looks. No change. 2. No change. 3. I'm getting upset now. 4. You know, have you ever had a medical treatment and you start getting to about the 3rd treatment, you don't notice any positive? Right? Have you ever had that? I remember I was dealing with allergies, and they put the little bat on my back with all the nails on it, and they find out, oh, you're allergic to this plant and that plant and cats. I said, cat? How am I allergic to cats? I have cats all over it. Never mind. But all these things. And so I'm supposed to take these treatments to get me, and it wasn't working. It gets tiring. After 2 years, it's still not working. I know that money we're paying is not happening. This is how he starts to feel, right? 5, 6, 7. Now, I don't know if you understand the amount of faith it takes. It doesn't seem like a lot of faith. But how many of us, if we were rich and powerful, would really do that? This Assyrian military leader decided he would go in public and humiliate himself, getting under dirty water of the Jordan, where the crossing is, with all the people around who are washing their clothes or whatever, and dip 7 disgusting times into that brown water. Verse 14. So he went down and he dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, as the man of God had told him. And his flesh was made whole, restored, and became clean, like that of a young child or a young boy. What I love about this story is it reminds me that appearances are not necessarily what is truth. We judge others based on what we see and what we hear. If I had seen Naaman, I would have said, nope, not a man of faith. After all, he's from an Assyrian country, and they don't worship God. By the way, little twist here. You know, Assyrians, Zoroastrianism is the religion of the Assyrians today. In fact, you can go in LA, you can see some of their Assyrian, the Zoroastrian centers over there in Canoga Park, around that area. You can see that. It's actually a beautiful design, ancient design. You know, Zoroaster actually was quoting from Daniel. He's one that predicted from the works of Daniel that Jesus was going to be born. And in fact, many who came from the east, the three wise men, the three magi, they had learned of the star. They're not so far. In fact, Jonah went to Nineveh and the entire city changed just 120 years after this event happened with Naaman. God cares about even the pagan nations around. God cares and He loves no matter who it is, no matter where you're from. We judge with our eyes and our ears, but God looks at the heart. He's called. Naaman is a powerful proof that there is a God who loves even the enemies of Israel. And of course it makes sense, because Israel, though we thought Israel is great, they're the ones messing up and not following God. So God has to choose someone else, right? Sometimes we Seventh-day Adventists are the same. We judge others based on our birthright, our denomination, when in actuality, perhaps other Christians out there sometimes care a lot more than we do. Elisha had a faith willing to say, I give up everything for that faith. He burned his oxen, his all of the oxen, what is it called? The yokes of oxen, thank you. And even the oxen got it. They became steaks, and everyone had a lot of, a lot of shish kebab from those guys. He was all in. He wanted Naaman to be all in too. It's not the end of the story. Next week, we're going to have another simple step backward that happens. But the truth is God has called you and me to take a simple step. He's called you to be all in. And I know we Christians always like to, and we Seventh-day Adventists always like to say, well, this is just church. This is just, yeah, that's nice and all, but I have real life here. Guess what? The Bible's filled with people that are in real life. But yet, they took that simple step. That step that humiliated them sometimes, but changed their lives so that they may be blessed beyond belief. God has called you, no matter what culture, no matter what background, no matter where you are, who you're from, or the language you speak. If you're even seeing some of this on the little translation down below, God's calling you. He loves you, and He wants you to take a simple step.